Okay. So I'm going to go over the quiz, the points, everything that you should hopefully remember because it was just yesterday. Okay. So this looks a lot like the quiz review, right? This was data though from period 6, and so what you were supposed to do is describe it, and you don't have an option on how to do that. You have to use the acronym SOX. Okay. So hopefully that's what you guys did, and if you go back to the descriptive statistics calculator here. You type it in there. I've already done this for you. You can see the results. And you're just supposed to now use your acronym to describe it. So this looks to me roughly symmetric. I don't know what else you'd say. So roughly symmetric. Doesn't appear to have any outliers, right? There's no weird boxes way over here, way up here. The center you would have reported as the mean and the median, right? 71, and the mean was 66.6. And then overall spread, right? The easiest one is the range, not the interquartile range, but the overall range is 100 minus the minimum of 29. Okay, so I'll write that down. You guys can copy this down because it's nice to have this for the chapter 2 test. It's just one more thing you can have out to look over when you guys do that. So your first one would be shape. And you were supposed to use context, right? So you would say the distribution. What's that?
I didn't really use context.
That's okay. I usually went back and took a point or two off if you didn't, but overall you should be okay. So the distribution of period 6 quiz scores appears to be approximately symmetric. Okay. And so the acronym SOX allows you to identify particular things of interest when you're talking about data. Okay, for our outliers, we would say the data did not appear to have any outliers. Okay, so SO, the data does not appear to have any outliers. The next one would be center. And what we did for center, right, is we used context and we used both measures of center, median and mean, which were given to you. So you would say the average quiz score, which is the mean, right? The average quiz score, again, this is the mean, was 66.6, and the median was 71. Okay, and then our last one here was spread. And again, if you did the quiz review, you have it right next to you, right? You just wrote down the range of quiz scores it was 100 is the max minus 29, which equals 71. Okay, and if you used your acronym, you got 2 points for shape, outliers, center, and spread. And if you forgot context, maybe you got 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, something like that. Okay, but pretty straightforward as far as describing data. Okay, when we have our chapter test, you are going to have to do this again, but it's going to be comparing. So it's not just going to be on one set of data. You're going to have to say the spread of period 6 quiz scores was greater than or smaller than period 4. So you have to use those comparison words. That's kind of like the culmination of describing data. Okay, so this was worth 8 points. The next one said list the 5-number summary and the IQR, and then check for outliers. Okay, so what you would have done is you would have gone back to your descriptive statistics, and you would have typed in your minimum, quartile 1, median, quartile 3, maximum, and IQR. So that's 6 points if you just copy down the data. So I'll write it on here, and then I'll scroll back. But the minimum value was 29. Quartile 1 was 45. Median was 71. quartile 3, 87, max of 100, and it calculates the IQR for you, which is quartile 3 minus quartile 1. And so if you filled those in, right, you get 6 points. Easiest 6 points ever. Yeah. Okay, so we've done these two. So what's left is checking for outliers. And so we did this two ways. You have to check for numbers that are too big or too small. And so to check for high outliers, right, you would take quartile 3, which is 87, and you would add 1.5 times the IQR. Type that straight into a calculator and it spits out 150. Some people were using the wrong numbers, got messed up there, and that's why they missed the points. But what does this say? This 150 says, look, that's the highest value that the data should be if it's not an outlier. Anything that's bigger than that would be an outlier, right? And so when you look at your data, the max value is 100. And so there's no data that's too big, right? And so you say no high outliers. Okay. And then you do the same thing when you check for low outliers. You go down to quartile 1, 45, and you subtract that exact same thing, 1.5 IQR. That gives you a value of negative 18. Some people forgot the negative sign, so they missed a point there or something. But that is not even possible, right? So it says, look, as long as your data is between negative 18 and 150, it's fine, right? And there's no data that's lower than negative 18. That's not even possible, so you would say no low outliers. And that was different, right? Period 4's data had 2 outliers on the low end. Period 6 did not. And you would get 2 points for your analysis here and here. 6, 7, 8, 9, that's a 10-point problem. You good there? Does that look familiar? Hopefully for those of you that did it. Awesome. Okay, so then find the mean and the median. So that's going to be worth points. So we already did that. So you would just repeat it. You'd say the mean was equal to 66.6%, and the median value was 71%. Okay? And then you would say, look, since the mean is less than the median, right? The data is slightly, it's not a ton less, but you would say the data is slightly skewed left, right? And remember the picture here. So this is the tail, and if your mean is lower than your median, that's because the tail is pulling that median towards it. I'm sorry, the mean towards it. So the mean definitely gets affected by data. Okay, so again, when you read your stats questions, let's check off what we did here. We listed the mean, we listed the median, okay? And then it says, what do they tell you about the shape? Well, I needed to have that analysis to say that it was slightly skewed left, right? And then the last question is, does this match your description? No, right? Didn't we say it looked, right? If you go back here, we looked at it. We said, hey, this looks roughly symmetric. Yeah, totally. And that sometimes happens, but when you get into the data, right, it tells you that there's a little bit of skewness because that mean is moving away from it. So you would say this does not match what we said earlier. And if I ask you the question, right, you would have to answer that. And I think, you get 2 points for that. So I think that was a 6-point problem. Okay. All right. The last one was, what's the standard deviation? And so that was S of X. And if you look on your data, you go right back here. Right here, standard deviation 22.2. Okay. And so if you just said 22, that's fine. You would say it's approximately 22.2. Okay, and all this data is percents, right? So reporting it, 2 points. Writing your sentence describing it, 2 points, yeah.
Would it hurt you if you went to the hundreds?
Oh, no, not at all. It's perfect, yeah. Stats doesn't really care about like decimals and stuff. I mean, you can approximate things. And for those of you, since I'm posting this video, I'm guessing that if you did this, you're not watching this video either, but it was very obvious when students went to Google and looked up standard deviation and copy and pasted the formal definition of standard deviation. They did the same thing for outliers, right? They copy and pasted something that I've never talked about in class that talks about within 2 standard deviations of the mean. So it's very obvious on these free response questions when people are just using the internet. So don't, you guys are engaged and you're doing it. Don't feel like some people are just getting off easy. They get 0 points when they don't use my definition. Okay. So your sentence, right? We did this on the quiz review. You just would recopy it. Okay. You would say, we can expect the data to deviate, right? Or to differ, right? So it's the root word of deviation. So we can expect the data to deviate from the mean, which we said was 66.6%, right? By 22 point whatever you put percent on average. That is a huge standard deviation, right? Like my average was a 66, which isn't great. It's like a D, right? But the standard deviation was 22%. So a lot of the data is really far above it and really far below, right? If the standard deviation was really small, that would be even worse because everyone would be getting Ds. So it seems like D was an average. A lot of people got higher than a D and a lot of people got lower than a D. Okay. And so this guy was 4 points. And so if you add that up, 10, 28 points. So there was 28 points. That was a free response. And then I had 2 multiple choice that were 5 points each, right? So 2 multiple choice for a total of 38 points on the test. Okay. So let's go back and look at the multiple choice questions, and then we'll call it good. So if I go back to the actual quiz here. Come on. All right, here we go. So if we got week 4. Monday. Quiz. There were 2 multiple choice questions down here at the end. So if I go click on them. Need to hardwire. This is brutal. Okay, so down here, if I go to questions, you obviously don't see this, but if I click on this guy, it says, I think this is about the mean versus the median. It says if a distribution is skewed to the right with no outliers. Okay, so skewed to the right, no outliers. So what you would do is you would say, well, if I'm skewed to the right, that means I look like this. And that means that this tail pulls the mean towards it, right? The average gets affected by those, and the median stays here. And so if you have right skewed data, your mean is definitely to the right or greater than the median. Right? And so if you go back here to our multiple choice options, you would say that the mean is greater than the median. Okay. All right, on the other one, which of the following is least affected by an extremely high outlier? So I've got mean, median, standard deviation, range, and max. Well, let's just kind of go through those. So if you have a bunch of data, and then I add this random point, didn't the maximum value change? For sure, right? It's now that. Didn't the spread change? Yeah. Standard deviation? Yeah. Now it varies more. The average gets pulled towards extreme values. And so the one that's least affected is the median. It's called a resistant measure. It resists large values or small values. Okay, so the correct answer on that guy would have been the median. Okay. All right, so if you didn't take quiz 1, whatever you got on this would have replaced it. If you missed this quiz, then your test that you take for this chapter will replace this quiz. Okay, so if you didn't get to it, you got to make sure and study for the test. All right? Okay.